Hey guys, sorry I didn't have a video for you last week. I got super sick and I lost my voice. You might even hear my voice still a little crackly, but I'm going to do my best today. I've got my electrolyte drink in my Gatorade bottle because I'm going to feel like a champion here because I really want to finish this series that I've been working on nihilism. This is part 3 of this 5-part series that I'm going to do on nihilism, some of the questions that I'm getting lately and how to address nihilism. The first one that I did was about the differences between how therapists and philosophers use the term nihilism because those differences are really muddying the waters. And then last week I talked about the scientific ways that you can increase meaning and purpose even within a philosophically nihilistic framework. And then this week we will be doing nihilism in teens, and next week we will be doing nihilism and autism. And then the last week I'm going to be doing the political definitions of nihilism and the recent FBI categorization of nihilism and violence. So, a lot to dig into. All of this is really just to help us understand this term and how it's used differently, philosophically, politically, psychologically, how it correlates with autism, how it's showing up with Gen Z, so that we can just kind of get a sense of what is going on with this nihilism term that people just keep throwing around. And I'm hoping that as we understand this concept better, that instead of it just kind of being thrown around randomly in modern conversations, you can find the right kind of help that you're needing, either for yourself or maybe the person that you love that you feel is affected by some aspect of nihilism. So first, the backdrop here. What's going on with Gen Z? So we have the CDC's National 2023 Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which showed that 1 in 3 U.S. high schoolers reported persistent sadness or hopelessness, and nearly 1 in 3 reported poor mental health most of the time. 1 in 5 was seriously considering suicide. 1 in 10 had attempted in the prior year. The rates are going to be the highest among girls, especially when the girls are on social media and are queer youth. Now, not all of that could be possibly related to nihilism. There's a lot going on there, but let's talk about what does it mean now to be 16, looking out into the world, doing the math of what it is to be alive, and deciding that this is all meaningless, that there is no point, because that is an aspect to what's going on in these statistics. The UK even has some, I think, even scarier statistics because they're struggling with this more than in the US, which is concerning to me because the UK is further along in secularizing than the US. But in 2018, it was 44% of 15-year-olds in England strongly disagreed with the idea that my life has meaning or purpose. And so if you're dealing with meaninglessness as a teen, it is harder than when you're dealing with this as an adult. And there's going to be a couple reasons for that. First of all, you just don't have a frontal lobe yet. Your brain has not even finished forming, which means we don't even have your brain at its best for any kind of deep philosophical problems. Executive functioning, long range planning matures in your mid 20s. And so, reward systems and stress activities are heightened, which means that the advice will kind of rely on you having a frontal lobe that you'll be able to kind of see your life in this bigger picture, or you'll have able to have some self-control to build a life of meaning and purpose. But often that advice isn't developmentally matched because they don't have a brain that does that yet. Number 2 reason that it's harder for teens than adults, and this one I think is really important, it's that they don't have an identity yet. Adolescence is the stage that you should be dealing with the identity versus role confusion stage. It's like your job as a teen is to build a coherent self and some kind of commitments. So telling a teen, for example, giving a teen Nietzsche and saying you can live by your own values can backfire. 1, because they probably don't have the frontal lobe or the reading skills to even understand that. And 2, live by your own values can backfire. They don't have stable values yet. They don't know who they are yet. They don't have anything to build on yet. So a lot of the advice that we see for nihilism that I do with my adult clients is some form of building your own sense of meaning and purpose from your authentic core values, from your own moral compass. And if you don't have those online yet, and you're really not out in the world experiencing things and learning who you are because you just experience the world through a screen, that's where teens are getting stuck. Because it's like, all the nihilism advice is like, know who you are, engage with the world, and start choosing a life of meaning and purpose, the story that you want to live, the projects that you want to engage with, the things that are inherently meaningful to you, living according to your core values no matter what's going on in the world. Like, this is the kind of advice that you get from existentialism. But if you have no idea who you are, and you're not even exploring what you are because you're stuck behind a screen and you're afraid to be mocked or made fun of, afraid to be cringe, and so you're not even really exploring or taking risks, which all teens in all previous generations were taking risks so that they could learn who and what they were. That's where teens are getting stuck. Another issue is that philosophies like Stoicism, existentialism, absurdism, optimistic nihilism, these are frameworks that can be very helpful. I've met now hundreds, maybe thousands of people who will tell me in a comment that their life had changed because they read The Myth of Sisyphus or Dostoevsky. But if your reading level is at Harry Potter level, then it means some of our best frameworks and thoughts and perspectives that we have for meaninglessness are out of reach for you. Another thing is that social media and COVID caused personality changes in Gen Z. So I think it was Jonathan Haidt who was showing the results of these studies, that conscientiousness as a personality trait is down, neuroticism is up, extroversion is down, introversion is up. So higher neuroticism is a well-established risk factor for anxiety, depression, emotional reactivity, also nihilism. Lower conscientiousness predicts poor follow-through and self-regulation, which means you're not going to follow through with building a life that's worth living. Lower extroversion means less social energy, less connectedness. And all of this kind of overlapping personality changes means that it's harder for this generation to build meaning and purpose, because you have to have some kind of conscientiousness. You have to have some kind of connection to the world. You have to be somewhat low in neuroticism. You have to be able to just get out into the world and learn what is inherently meaningful for you and what are your core values and what makes you light up and what makes you doesn't, what makes you not. And if you're not willing to engage in that process because you're engaging with the world through a screen, then it's changing the brains of Gen Z to be able to even handle this project of meaning building, right? And then, of course, you add on top of that, phones, sleep problems, nighttime social media is linked with shorter sleep, worse sleep quality, worse mental health. It's going to directly erode your mood and attention and meaning-making opportunities for the brain. And so all of this to say, this isn't like, I'm not trying to be the millennial. I'm an elder millennial and be like, get off your damn phones. But what I am trying to say is with a lot of compassion, that these kids are having to deal with more shit than any other generation, because they were born with the phone in their hands. They see the world on fire every single day. I didn't grow up in a world like that. You didn't grow up in a world like that. And they have to deal with this feeling of the world on fire every single day that they can see. Now, maybe the world's always been on fire, but we never got to see it all like we do now. But they, from the time they were young, got to see it all, and they have less resources to deal with that. They don't get the nest period that we all got as kids, where you have a smaller world and you get to form an identity or belonging in this kind of smaller corner of the world. Neuroticism is up, so they're more likely to be overwhelmed with the state of the world. They're less likely to know who they are because there's a lot of social media masking or fear of being roasted or fear of being cringy, which then limits your experiences that you need to figure out who you are and what makes you tick. And then your brain isn't even fully online yet to be able to handle things like firsthand philosophy or executive functioning that allows you to set up goals to create a life that's worth living. Now, before you ask, I don't work with any teen clients. I don't think it's appropriate. I'm not a therapist. And why would a teen trust me or even really want to talk to me? But I do sometimes work with parents to help them maybe understand their teens more when it comes to how to deal with their nihilistic philosophy of life and how it's shutting them down. So here would be kind of the top 10 things that we have data on that can help teens when they are feeling particularly nihilistic. And some of these things are a bit watered down from the advice that you would give to adults because of the differences that I just talked about. So number one, replace find your values, which we see a lot in existentialism and nihilism support. Find your values, live according to your core values. We can't do that yet with teens. So instead we need to do run value experiments. So essentially you can tell teens that you can't give up on a life yet until you know what life could be worth living for you. And you're already suffering, so you may as well try and see if you could create a life that you would actually love. And we can't do that until we have a sense of who you are. So instead of jumping right to the advice of, let's live according to your core values, we have to first run value experiments, trying new things for the purpose of seeing what resonates with you and what doesn't. And after each try, we kind of track what gave you energy, what felt empty. Are you a helper? Are you playful? Are you rebellious? Are you creative? Are you ambitious? Are you kind? What makes you tick? And parents sometimes have to push teens to do this because they're not going to have the energy or drive to do this on their own. Number two, practice the idea that the brain creates purpose rather than finds it. Teen brains can really ruminate on this concept of, I need to find who I am. I need to find my purpose, as if it's something that they'll just like open the door one day and their purpose will just like fall on top of them. Instead, we have to have something like a journal or a dry erase board on the fridge with some kind of sentence that's like, for now, I'm about blank and I show it by blank this week. Purpose isn't finding some like, oh, I found the perfect job that's going to tell me who I am and a community that's going to love me in exactly the ways that I want to be loved. Like we don't find that way. Purpose is a behavioral anchor that reduces rumination. And so we can do that by reframing their thoughts. We don't need to know your ultimate purpose of life when you're 35 yet. For now, I'm about discovering who I am, and I'll show it by trying a new club this week, right? We can just reframe those anchors, and that's going to reduce rumination that they're freaking out about not having meaning and purpose. Number three, engineering belonging. So much of what nihilism is for teens is in isolation and not belonging. And if the world doesn't change because you're here, it gives your brain ammunition to the idea that the world doesn't need you at all. And then what's the point? We have to engineer belonging on purpose. They have to join at least one in-person team, club, service, something where they're needed, something where they'll be noticed when they're gone. School connectedness is protective across all metrics. We know from the data that belonging reliably increases meaning. And so you have to force your kids to get to belong somewhere. Now, maybe we don't know where yet, and that's okay. We can go through a couple years of we're going to try things. And because you may even have to you live under my house, you live under my rules kinds of things. We have to try finding a place where you're going to find your people. I don't know where your people are. We're still discovering who you are, but you have to engage in trying. Number four, protect sleep like a sport. This is going to be just your classic, what you hear basically all the experts saying about phones. No phones in bedrooms, no interactive screens in the last hour before sleep. Try to get them at least 8 or 9 hours of sleep. This will change mood regulation and help every other step. We know that social media at night and poor sleep is really bad for their mental health, and it's just not going to get their brain involved. It's not going to give their brain any opportunity to create any kind of meaning because their brain is just with the phones and the sleep is just not going to be at its best. It's just going to be grumpy. It's going to see the world with blue colored glasses because I'm grumpy. And we don't need any more grumpy brains when we're trying to build a life of meaning and purpose. That takes work for a brain. Number five, try to encourage any activity where they experience a flow state, 30 to 60 minutes on a skill that is absorbing to them. Music, coding, art, lifting, trail run, whatever. This strengthens the idea that experience matters, and some experiences are enjoyable just for the experience of it. And what would it be to build my life where I could focus on what's worth experiencing as a human? And we can't build a life based on how you want to experience it if you're not trying to experience things, right? Number 6, dinner conversation questions. This is good in general for kids and teens to have family dinner. It's something where I'm really glad sometimes that I was raised Mormon, because it's perfectly normal for me to have family dinner and have that be a priority. And because it's just how I grew up and it's something that I took with me. And this one sounds so simple, but people overlook how neurologically powerful it is, that shared meals are a major predictor of adolescent well-being, not just for nutrition, but you're modeling meaning making. So during family meals, their brain's social circuitry, their mirror neurons, their limbic, resonance is activated in a way that stabilizes emotional regulation, and it starts to build their narrative about what we're doing here, what's the purpose of life. And so that's just a fancy way of saying sitting down and talking about life around food rewires a teen's brain towards belonging and story. And so we have to try to curate that when we get those dinner moments. What was one moment today that surprised you? What did you feel proud of yourself about this week? Who are you? How are you different today than you were a year ago? What that's doing is it's priming their brain that, hey, it's actually worth it to see what kind of character you can make about yourself, that you change, that you grow. Isn't that exciting? If you could fix one thing about the world, what would it be? What's something that you used to believe, but you don't anymore? And so these kinds of questions, they integrate lots of curiosity and reflection and identity building. And these are antidotes to nihilism. Now, I don't sometimes have the energy to think of new questions. And so there's lots of them. I'm not going to do like an Amazon affiliate link here because I just don't want to get into that game. I'm not selling anything here, but I will sometimes like buy question packs for when my brain is dead, and we'll just go through them. Because even at a young age, like my youngest two are 7 and my oldest is 14, they really look forward to me asking questions about their favorites, because they get to build an identity around the table. I like this color. I want to be this growing up. When I grow up, I'm good at this, but my weakness is this. This is the kind of life that I would want to have. This is what I would do when I was president. It's modeling to them that you're a person, that you're unique, that you're needed in this family, that you're building a person, and it's exciting to be in that process. And and you get to just practice having something to offer. And so it's a really good practice to have dinner conversations and dinner questions where they get to answer something and they get to see how their answer differs a little bit. And it just kind of subconsciously builds this idea that you're a person and you're growing into a person who is needed in the world. And there are some things that speak to you more than anybody else in the family. And let's build a life that's built on you, that is built intentionally by the beautiful person that you're becoming. You can model that by having that kind of interest at the dinner table. I don't know what number am I on here? 7. Movies that address meaninglessness but encourage how to dance and play in it. This can help them feel that they're not alone. This can normalize that it's okay to not know who you are right now and not know the meaning of life right now. That people have felt that way and they've gotten through it and are glad to be alive. This could be like the show The Good Place, where they do have like philosophical themes and they talk about the afterlife, or movies where one person really made a difference against all odds, or someone was able to find themselves. And any time that a brain can laugh at absurdity is a brain that's integrating the absurdity of life. Even something like Dumb and Dumber and Monty Python, that yes, humans are so silly, but we can laugh at it and we can laugh at it together. That's a brain that's integrating the absurdities of life rather than getting overwhelmed with the absurdity of life. You can help your teen see that the world's absurdity is not a glitch in the system. It's the condition for their creativity and irony and joy and figuring out who they are and how they want to dance in this life. And that other people have gotten stuck and not known where to go, but they find their way and you will too. And that just kind of like lowers the temperature, that they can just kind of take a breath, that where they are, other people have been through and they've gotten through it too, right? Number 8, similar to sleep, the brain can't create meaning if it's not moving. Philosophical despair can't be solved purely at the level of thought, which was a terrible truth that I learned way too late in life, because I really thought that I was just having a philosophical problem. But so much of my problem was really more embodied and having to deal with postpartum depression for me, and lack of sleep and not taking care of my body because I was dealing with this philosophical problem. But a lot of it was really more related to my body, that our body and our brains are connected. How your body is going to change how your brain interprets and sees the world. So, the studies are very clear: regular movement, rhythm, exposure to nature, it increases our capacity to access serotonin and dopamine, all of which make life feel more meaningful even before you've intellectually found meaning. And so, encouraging physical rituals that ground them: running, drumming, rock climbing, dancing, gardening, walking a dog. The key is to move in rhythm with life again. And so, when teens are disembodied, online, sedentary, dissociated, that's when the void expands. And so when they rejoin sensory experience, meaning appears more as a felt phenomenon, not just this abstract puzzle of reading, other, nihilistic Reddit threads or whatever when you're totally dissociated. Number 9, model, I don't know, but let's stay curious, right? Teens internalize not just what we believe, but how we respond to uncertainty. And so if we respond to hard questions about meaning or suffering with defensiveness or fear or forced optimism, what they learn by all of those subconscious cues is that uncertainty is dangerous. And my mom and dad don't like that. But if you respond with curiosity, like, yeah, I don't know that either, but let's keep exploring it, they learn that uncertainty is a playground, not a threat. That curiosity is a core protective factor against existential despair. The most resilient young people aren't the ones who have all the answers. They're the ones who have questions that they still find worth asking and feel safe enough to do so. This is very similar to the advice that I know I've looked at the studies on how to inoculate kids with the concept of death. Like, how do we deal with death? And what we found is that when we use phrases like grandpa is asleep now, and we use like hushed voices when talking about death, what kids subconsciously learn is that death is something to fear. We can't say the name. We have to say like go to sleep or passed on, right? Because there's something scary about this. They notice things like that. Their brains are very smart. And so when you talk about death or uncertainty, and it's, I don't know, but what do you think? I don't know, but I'd love to explore this idea with you. What it actually signals to the nervous system is, hey, it's okay to live a life where you don't know everything, right? I'm living that life where I don't know everything either, but we're still a family. Your life still matters. Your journey of what you're going to do as a person, I'm so excited to see what you do with your life because you're amazing and you're beautiful. And I'm so proud of the person you're becoming. And it's been an honor for me to watch you grow up, right? It's signaling to them that they can live a life where they don't know everything and that it's okay. And it calms down their nervous system when they start to ruminate about things like death and meaninglessness. And the last one, number 10, is just normalize this season of life. I love that you're having feelings of thinking, what's the point? Because it's going to lead to you creating a life that's for you. And that's a big transition. When you're a child, you just kind of do what I tell you and you kind of just live the life that I create for you. And now you're in this teenage space where you're having feelings of what's the point, which means that, the life that I can give you isn't going to be good enough for you. You're going to have to start making decisions for you. And this is totally normal. And I don't know what that life is going to be, but I'm going to be with you every step of the way because you can't give up on life yet until you build a life that is meant for you. And so we're going to explore who you are and we're going to explore building that life. And I'm going to be with you every step of the way. And we just normalize it the way that you'd normalize their first heartbreak or their first person, dying. We tell them that you're not broken for feeling this way. You're awake. You're not a child anymore. This is fantastic that you're asking these questions because in many ways, nihilism is the moment that consciousness first meets the truth of a chaotic universe and asks, what do I do with this, right? And so when a teen feels like the world is meaningless, what they're really doing is beginning to take responsibility for meaning making itself. And so that shift from meaning being given to meaning being built as a skill that I can help teach to you is the birth of adult consciousness. So instead of trying to rescue them from it or being scared that they're asking these big questions about, why do I even have to have grades? Because because climate change and the world is going to blow up and look at all these bad things happening. What's the point? Instead of trying to just like rescue them from that, because that brings up our own feelings, we actually walk beside them through it. And that's where the transformation happens. When we treat this as a normal phase of life, rather than that kid is broken, it helps them to get through it, because sometimes their thoughts trigger our own fears, and then we project it onto them and we want to fix them because we don't want to think about these things either. But if you can control your own triggers and treat it as a normal thing, then we can consider the way that we would consider, getting your heart broken as a totally normal experience of life. It helps us not project things onto them, which kind of creates a wall that they can feel. The good news is that your nihilistic teen, this can get better. Things get better. How their brain is today isn't how they're always going to be. Our job isn't to hand them perfect meaning. It's to scaffold these experiments with value building, belonging, sleep, movement, honest conversation around the dinner table. We're modeling this until their brain and identity catch up. And the research is clear that when we engineer connection, protect sleep, get bodies moving, practice everyday purpose, teens' mood and meaning markers improve. So we don't wait for a purpose to appear. We don't wait for their perfect job where they're going to be given themselves on a platform. Here's who you are, and here's your community, and here's your purpose. We build it in small, repeatable ways. And most kids do come out the other side of this stronger, clearer, and more sure of themselves that, you're not alone. This is a season. Seasons turn. And we have evidence that these things can turn around in a teen. We have the CDC, for example, that study that showed that school connectedness predicts better mental health in adulthood, and boosting connectedness at the school and class level can really help also. So we have other, there's studies that show everything that I'm saying here. We have a meta-analysis that teens who share at least 3 family meals a week have healthier patterns, fewer disordered eating behaviors, and also just more regulated behavior, and they're better at narrative building. We have, national sample links showing that youth volunteering get better with physical health and more positive outlook and lower anxiety and depression. Like there's meta-analysis showing that teens can get through this. Like we can help model how they can get through this. And a lot of this advice is the same for adults too, but teens have to do more identity building than adults do, and they're less obedient than children, which means you're in this phase where if you're a parent listening, you have to help them help themselves, because it's really easy for a teen to get on a dopamine train and then burn out and then be super depressed and then look at the world and not see the point and shut down, and then be isolated and then get more shut down. And that's the downward spiral that we're trying to help them out of. So if you're looking for a therapist, you're going to want one that focuses on teens, because the philosophical frameworks that we have that help adults in nihilism don't necessarily map on easily onto teens until they have that identity piece. So I hope that helped. I do sometimes work with parents of teens when I'm taking new clients. I'm not currently. I try to put out as much free content as I can in the meantime to help as many people as I can. I don't work with teens directly because they need this to come from someone that they care about and have developed trust with. And so it's just not as effective coming from me. Next week, I'm going to do the connection between autism and nihilism, which will be super interesting to dig into. I just turned 40, and there was this combination of events. I'm sharing some of my personal life a little bit, where my dad and my brother are getting tested for autism, and then that started to make me think about whether I'm autistic. And then at the same time, I posted a video on TikTok talking about the connection between nihilism and autism. Some of that is being hyper analytical and seeing patterns. Some of that is like sensitivity to suffering. There's a lot going in there that we'll talk about next week. And then I was reading through the comments on, I asked autistic people to really, voice their experience, and I was just resonating with everything that they were saying. And I would say at least 50% of my pretty hardcore nihilistic clients are somewhere on the autistic spectrum, and they reach out to me and resonate with my work. And then I just have some signs, like growing up, for example, like I was a tomboy until the age of 14. I had short hair and I played soccer and I dressed like a boy. And it wasn't because of gender dysphoria. It was because I really didn't understand. I didn't understand girl culture or girl behavior or what they were doing, but I did know how to play sports. And so I just kind of went that direction. That felt more comfortable for me until I hit puberty and I was able to accept some femininity. I do think I do some masking. I don't know how much of that is normal or not. Like I think everybody masks socially, but maybe not. I do like with eye contact, I do like pay attention. Like I'll if I'm looking at someone, I'll do a couple seconds and then I'll look away and I'm like mindful of like the eye contact that I'm doing. Um and just like how analytical I am and like just how I try to get to the root of the problem and really deeply understand something, and how I am interested in philosophy and theology and some of these things that take a little bit more of an analytical brain. So I don't know. I'm all this to say, me preparing for next week's video, which is the connection between autism and nihilism, and my family getting tested and doing some posts on it. And then I had a friend of mine who she's older than me, who recently got diagnosed with autism, just because with women it just takes so much longer to even recognize it. And I was talking with her and I was really resonating with how her brain works. All of this to say, I'm going to go get tested for autism, and I'm 40 years old, and there were certainly some signs, but never really seriously considered it. I just kind of figured that I was more analytical than a lot of, especially my female peers. But that could be because of other things. My dad is a teacher, my mom is a teacher. Like that was the conversations that we had around the dinner table. And so I don't know like how much of that is nature and nurture, right? All this to say, I will be getting tested for autism as part of my preparation for next week's video. And I think it's going to be interesting to not only explore that conceptually, but also do some digging with me personally, because it's starting, like when I was talking this out with girlfriends and I was asking them, like, do you ever pay attention to like how much eye contact you're doing, and like do this and then look away, and like, are you doing that? And they're like, no. So yeah, there's some signs. So I'm going to be interested to go into that with you guys, not only conceptually, but even personally, as I consider if I'm on the autism. And I may not be. I'm 40. Like it could easily be other things. Like I'm not I'm really not sure, but there are definitely some signs. So explore that with me conceptually and personally next week here on No Nonsense Spirituality. Bye guys.